The evening sun dipped low over Atlanta's narrow side streets, painting the cracked asphalt in shades of fading gold. Jamal Harris tapped his fingers against the steering wheel, the faint hum of old-school jazz filling the cabin of his black Chevy Malibu. He had just clocked out after a double shift at the hospital. His shoulders ached, his eyelids were heavy, but the thought of finally seeing his little daughter before bedtime gave him enough strength to keep going. The green light ahead flickered to yellow, then red. Jamal eased to a smooth stop, his car's engine purring softly. In the rearview mirror, a pair of glaring high beams cut through the dusk. A white police cruiser idling close, too close. Jamal straightened his posture instinctively, his heartbeat slowing into that tense, cautious rhythm every black driver in America knows too well. Then came the flash of blue and red. The cruiser's siren chirped once, sharp, commanding. "Not again," Jamal muttered under his breath. He signaled, pulled calmly into a narrow shoulder, and parked. His fingers gripped the wheel tighter as the crunch of heavy boots grew louder outside his door. Officer Greg Kincaid approached with a swagger that wasn't just confidence, it was ownership. His pale face was half-shadowed by the brim of his cap, but his eyes gleamed with a cold amusement. He didn't greet Jamal. He didn't explain the stop. Instead, he smirked, tapping the butt of his flashlight against the driver's window with a dull thunk. "License and registration," he said, voice low but edged with something sharper. Jamal nodded slowly. "Sure, officer, may I ask what—" "Don't ask," Kincaid cut him off. "Just do it." The silence that followed was thick. Jamal moved carefully, hands visible, reaching for the glove compartment. His nerves prickled, but he kept his voice even. "I'm just getting my registration." Kincaid didn't wait. He yanked the door open, griping the top frame, and with one swift motion, slammed it back with enough force to shake the whole car. "Step out! Now!" Confusion and fear flickered across Jamal's face. "Officer, Now!" Jamal unbuckled, stepping onto the cold pavement, his palms slightly raised. His body was still, but his mind raced. He hadn't broken any law. He hadn't even been speeding. Behind him, Kincaid circled the Chevy, eyes scanning like a predator sizing up prey. He reached for his baton, dragging its metal tip across the hood in a slow, deliberate scrape that made Jamal's chest tighten. "You think you can just cruise through my streets in this piece of junk?" Kincaid sneered, and before Jamal could answer, the baton came down hard on the side mirror. It cracked with a sharp snap, dangling by its wires. Jamal flinched. His throat went dry. Kincaid didn't stop. He swung again, shattering the taillight. The officer's grin widened as shards of red plastic rained onto the road, but Kincaid hadn't noticed something. Inside the Chevy, mounted neatly behind the rearview mirror, a small black dashcam blinked silently, recording every second. And it wasn't just recording. It was streaming. Live. 3 states away, Jamal's cousin Malik, scrolling his phone on a quiet Friday night, blinked at a sudden notification. "Dashcam live, Jamal Harris." He tapped it. His screen lit up with the image of a white cop smashing the car, and Malik's blood ran cold. And at that very moment, the live viewer count began to rise. Malik's thumb hovered over his screen. He thought it was just another routine live stream. Jamal sometimes used the dashcam to document late-night drives for fun. But this wasn't the quiet hum of city streets or soft jazz playing. It was Kate. The image shook slightly as Officer Kincaid's baton slammed again, denting the Chevy's trunk. Malik's stomach tightened as he heard his cousin's voice, calm but strained. "Officer, please, I didn't do anything wrong." Kincaid's laugh was cold, sharp like broken glass. "Didn't do anything wrong?" He leaned close to Jamal, his breath visible in the cool evening air. "You don't get to decide what's wrong out here. I do." The baton cracked down again, this time on the rear windshield. Malik's hand clenched into a fist. He glanced at the viewer counter, 27 people watching, then 35, then 49. "Yo, what the hell?" he whispered, immediately tapping the share button. "Everybody look at this now! Jamal's in trouble!" Back on the roadside, Jamal kept his voice low. "I work at Grady Memorial Hospital. I just got off my shift. My daughter's waiting for me at home." Kincaid didn't care. He stepped forward, planting himself just inches from Jamal. "Save your little bedtime story. People like you always have one." Jamal flinched slightly as the cop's flashlight jabbed against his chest. His mind raced through every story he'd ever heard. Drivers stopped for nothing, lives ending in seconds. He forced himself to breathe evenly, his heart pounding like a trapped bird. But in the corner of his eye, he noticed something. The tiny blue LED light on his dashcam, still blinking, recording, streaming. And then, a quiet ding from Kincaid's radio. "Unit 14, do you copy? We're picking up unusual chatter about a live video. You good out there?" Kincaid froze for half a second, confusion flickering in his eyes. "Chatter?" he muttered under his breath. At that exact moment, Malik's post began spreading like wildfire. Notifications exploded on his phone. "What? Where is this happening? Is he an ATL? I know that street. Somebody call the news!" Viewers jumped from 50 to 200, then 300. Inside the Chevy, the stream continued unbroken. Every sound, every slam of the baton, every word from Kincaid was being captured. "Step back!" Kincaid barked suddenly, perhaps realizing for the first time that Jamal wasn't the one trembling. He was. Jamal didn't move. His voice was low but firm. "Am I being detained, or am I free to go?" That simple question seemed to ignite something ugly in Kincaid. His jaw tightened. His grip on the baton whitened. And then, smash! The cop brought it down on the front headlight, glass spraying across the ground. "You're going to regret that tone," he hissed. The viewer count climbed to 1,000. Miles away, in a newsroom downtown, an intern glanced at Twitter and froze. Guys? You might want to see this. A cop's going off on a driver, live." Back at the scene, a neighbor across the street peeked through their window. Then another stepped onto their porch, phone in hand, recording. Whispers turned into murmurs. Shadows gathered quietly at the end of the block, and just as Kincaid raised his baton again, the faint echo of another siren began to creep closer. Not from his cruiser, from someone else's. The distant wail of the approaching siren sliced through the tense silence like a blade. Jamal's eyes darted toward the glow at the end of the street, red and blue lights bouncing off the buildings. He didn't know whether to feel relief or fear. Kincaid, however, stiffened. His head snapped toward the sound, his expression shifting from cruel amusement to a flash of unease. "What the hell?" he muttered, his grip tightening on the baton. More neighbors stepped out onto porches now. Some whispered among themselves. Others simply lifted their phones, recording. A woman across the street dialed a number with trembling fingers. "Yeah, there's a cop out here. He's smashing some guy's car. Just get someone over here." Inside the Malibu, the dashcam feed kept rolling. Smooth, unbroken, merciless. Viewers hit 3,000. "Yo, this is ATL," someone commented. "Somebody tag the local news." "Who is this cop?" Malik was frantically messaging in a group chat. "Somebody call Jamal's wife now. Get her to that street." Back on the roadside, Jamal kept his composure. His voice was calm but edged with a quiet steel. "Officer, I told you. I'm just trying to get home. Please stop damaging my car." Kincaid turned back slowly, eyes narrowing. The other siren was close now. Too close. He could hear the tires on asphalt. He knew another unit was arriving. And if they saw this? His lip curled. "You think anyone's gonna believe you over me?" Jamal didn't answer. He didn't have to. Because at that very second, Kincaid's radio crackled again. "Unit 14, dispatch here. We're getting reports of a live video from your location. Status check?" Kincaid froze. The muscles in his jaw twitched. He clicked the radio. All clear? Just a routine stop. No problem here." His voice was steady, but beads of sweat were forming along his temple. The new siren turned onto the street. A second police cruiser rolled up and parked behind Kincaid's. Two officers stepped out. Officer Linda Torres and her rookie partner Carter. They glanced around, confused by the cluster of onlookers now forming. "What's going on here?" Torres asked, her tone neutral but suspicious. Kincaid straightened, forcing a grin. "Routine stop. Guy was acting nervous. Just checking things out." Torres's eyes flicked to Jamal's car. Shattered mirror, broken taillight, glass on the ground. Her brow furrowed. "Routine stop, huh?" Before Kincaid could respond, one of the neighbors called out, "He's lying! He's been smashing that man's car for no reason!" Phones lifted higher, red recording lights blinked in the dark. Torres turned to Jamal. "Sir, is that true?" Jamal's gaze shifted from Torres to Kincaid. He took a slow breath. "Yes, ma'am, I was just driving home. He pulled me over and started destroying my car." Torres stepped closer, her eyes narrowing at Kincaid. "Greg, what are you doing?" Kincaid's smile faltered. Linda, it's not what it looks like. This guy, he was resisting. I had to. But before he could finish, Torres's radio chirped. Torres, Carter, be advised. The precinct just received a live feed of your location. It's trending online. Torres blinked. Live feed? Kincaid's head whipped toward Jamal's car. His eyes locked on the small black dashcam mounted behind the rearview mirror. The tiny blue light was still blinking. And then his face went pale. Viewers hit 10,000. On Twitter, a hashtag exploded, #Jamal Harris. Live newsrooms were already retweeting the footage, and in that instant, Kincaid realized this wasn't just a stop, it was a stage. Officer Kincaid's eyes locked on the blinking dashcam like it was a loaded weapon pointed straight at his career. For the first time that night, his smirk disappeared, replaced by a flicker of panic. Torres followed his gaze. She leaned slightly to the left, peering through the cracked window of Jamal's Malibu. Her eyes caught the faint blue LED light on the dashcam. And then her radio crackled again, louder this time. Attention units on Peachtree Avenue. Be advised, the entire incident is live streaming. Repeat, the feed is public. Media outlets are already requesting a statement. Carter, the rookie, blinked in confusion. He looked from Torres to Kincaid. Wait, this is streaming? As in, people are watching this right now? Kincaid's face hardened, his voice dropping to a harsh whisper. Turn that thing off. Now! Jamal didn't move. He stood quietly beside his car, hands still slightly raised, his breathing steady but his heart pounding like a drum. I can't, Jamal said simply. It's automatic. The moment the engine's on, it streams to my cloud. I can't stop it from here. Kincaid took a step closer, his baton still in hand. Then I'll smash it too. But Torres stepped between them, her palm raised in warning. Greg, don't. Her voice was calm, but there was a firmness that made Kincaid hesitate. Linda, you don't understand. He was acting suspicious. Torres cut him off, gesturing toward the growing group of neighbors with their phones raised. Do you really want to add witness tampering to whatever this already is? The murmurs from the crowd grew louder. Someone shouted, We saw everything! Another voice added, It's all on camera. Meanwhile, Malik's phone buzzed nonstop. He stared at the skyrocketing viewer count, 25,000. He posted again. Channel 9 News just picked it up. They're replaying it live on TV. Jamal's in danger. Keep sharing. Inside a nearby living room, a woman flipped through channels and froze as the local news cut in with a breaking live feed. The headline scrolled across the screen. Atlanta, cop caught smashing driver's car. Live video going viral. Back on the street, the second police cruiser's dashcam was also running. Carter, unsure what to do, glanced nervously at Torres. Should we call the sergeant? Yes, Torres said, her voice clipped. She keyed her radio. Dispatch, we have a situation involving Officer Kincaid, requesting immediate supervisor presence. Kincaid's face flushed red. What are you doing? Linda, you're overreacting. No, she said firmly, her eyes narrowing. You're the one who's done too much. Jamal finally lowered his hands. His voice was quiet but steady. All I wanted was to get home, to see my daughter before she went to sleep. Kincaid sneered, but his bravado was cracking. He turned slightly, scanning the crowd. Phones, cameras, too many eyes, too much proof. And then, from down the block, another set of headlights appeared. A black SUV rolled slowly toward them, its tinted windows hiding whoever was inside. The neighbors began whispering louder now. Someone muttered, Is that the precinct captain? The SUV stopped behind the line of patrol cars. The driver's door opened with a soft click. Out stepped a tall man in a crisp uniform. His presence was sharp, commanding, the kind of authority that silenced even murmurs. Captain Raymond Price. Kincaid's stomach dropped. Torres straightened her posture instinctively. Carter fumbled to adjust his vest. Jamal exhaled slowly, his eyes fixed on the man who now walked toward them with slow, deliberate steps. The dashcam was still streaming. 40,000 people were watching, and the real reckoning was about to begin. Captain Raymond Price stepped onto the pavement with the quiet weight of someone used to commanding a room without raising his voice. His polished boots clicked against the cracked asphalt as he approached the scene. The crowd of neighbors, now a dozen strong, fell into a tense silence. Even the phones recording him lowered slightly, not out of respect but from sheer anticipation. Kincaid straightened his posture, trying to mask the unease in his eyes. "Captain," he said, forcing a casual tone, "I was just handling a stop. The driver was—" "Don't," Price interrupted calmly, his voice like tempered steel. His gaze swept the scene. Jamal standing beside his damaged Chevy, the shattered mirror hanging by a thread, the glass littering the ground. Then his eyes landed on the small blinking dashcam still mounted behind the windshield. He didn't need anyone to explain what had happened. Torres stepped forward quickly. "Sir, the driver's name is Jamal Harris. He was compliant." Officer Kincaid initiated the stop without explanation and began damaging the vehicle. "It's been live streaming." "Sir, the media already has it." Price's jaw tightened. "How many viewers?" Torres glanced at her phone. "Over 40,000 and climbing." The captain's expression didn't change, but the silence that followed was heavier than a shout. Kincaid tried again. "Sir, with all due respect, this is being blown out of proportion. The guy was acting nervous. I had to ensure he wasn't—" "Enough." Price's voice dropped lower. "I saw the feed." Kincaid froze. Price turned to Jamal. "Mr. Harris, are you injured?" Jamal met his eyes. Calm. Tired. "No, sir, but my car—" He gestured to the damage, his voice catching slightly. "That car's how I get to work, how I take my daughter to school." Price gave a single nod, his expression unreadable. Then he looked back at Kincaid, his tone shifting to something sharper. "You've disgraced this department tonight," the crowd murmured. Phones lifted again. Kincaid's face flushed. "Captain, You think you can justify this?" Price stepped closer, his words precise, deliberate. "You assaulted a citizen's property on a public street with no probable cause, and you did it under a badge that's supposed to protect people." Torres added quietly, "And sir, there are multiple witnesses, neighbors, plus the dashcam feed is still rolling." Price's eyes flicked to the side as another patrol car pulled up. Two internal affairs officers stepped out, their black uniforms unmistakable. One carried a small body camera, the other held a tablet already connected to the live footage. Kincaid's composure cracked. "Wait, this is ridiculous. You're going to side with him? He's probably—" "Not another word," Price snapped. It wasn't loud, but it carried the weight of finality. Jamal shifted slightly, exhaling for the first time in what felt like hours. The tension in his shoulders loosened just a fraction. Behind them, a news van screeched to a stop. A reporter jumped out, cameraman in tow. "Is this the location of the live incident?" she called out, her voice sharp with urgency. The IA officer stepped forward toward Kincaid. "Officer Greg Kincaid, you are being placed on immediate administrative leave pending investigation. Hand over your weapon and badge." The crowd gasped. Kincaid's mouth fell open. "You can't—" "Yes, we can," Price cut in firmly. "And we will." Reluctantly, Kincaid unholstered his firearm, his fingers trembling as he handed it over. Then his badge. The IA officer slipped them into a sealed evidence pouch. Price turned to Jamal again. "Mr. Harris, I can't undo what happened, but will ensure a full report is filed. You'll be contacted for an official statement." Jamal nodded slowly. "Thank you, Captain." But the crowd wasn't done. Someone shouted, "He shouldn't just get leave, he should be fired." Another yelled, "We saw everything, arrest him!" And before anyone could calm them, more sirens echoed in the distance. This time not from police. It was the media convoy. 3 more vans turned the corner, headlights glaring, cameras ready. Kincaid paled, because this wasn't just a suspension anymore. It was about to become a national headline. The viewer count hit 75,000, and the world was watching. The sharp glare of floodlights from 3 media vans washed over the quiet street, turning the scene into an impromptu stage. Reporters spilled out, microphones in hand, their camera crews locking onto Jamal, the shattered Chevy, and the tense standoff between officers. "Sir, can you tell us what happened?" one reporter called, aiming her mic at Jamal. Jamal blinked against the sudden light. His heart was still pounding, but he stood straight. "I was just driving home from work," he said slowly. "He pulled me over. No reason. Then he started braking my car." His voice caught slightly. I didn't even say anything wrong." The reporters swiveled their lenses toward Kincaid, whose face was now flushed and taut with panic. The bright lights highlighted the sweat dripping down his temple. He tried to look composed, but his eyes darted nervously from camera to camera, as if realizing each angle was another nail in his coffin. Price stepped in between them, raising a firm hand. "No statements until we finish processing this scene," he said, his voice calm but commanding. But the crowd wasn't listening. They were no longer just neighbors. They were becoming an audience and a jury. "He should be arrested right here," someone shouted from the back. "Yeah, if it was one of us, we'd be in cuffs already." Torres moved instinctively to create some space, her voice even. "Please stay back, this is still an active scene." But the phones kept rising higher. Live streams multiplied. Twitter, Facebook, TikTok, all buzzing. The hashtag Jamal Harris Live was now trending nationally. Kincaid tried to salvage his stance. "This is being taken out of context," he muttered under his breath. But the words were caught on a boom mic from one of the cameras. I had reasonable suspicion." Price turned on him sharply. "Reasonable suspicion doesn't involve smashing a man's car, Greg." The IA officer beside them pulled out a tablet, showing Kincaid the live footage. "Context? You made it yourself. Every second is recorded. You'll have a chance to explain it to internal affairs and a courtroom." The weight of that sentence hit like a hammer. Jamal turned his eyes to Kincaid, not with hatred, but with a tired, hollow disbelief. "Do you even know what you've done to me? To my daughter? She's going to see this online before I even get home." Those words cut deeper than any headline. Even Torres shifted slightly, glancing away. The murmur of the crowd grew into a low rumble. Some were angry, some were heartbroken. Others simply stared, numb. But together, they were witnessing something larger than a traffic stop. They were seeing the system exposed. And then, from the edge of the gathering, a young man in a hoodie lifted his phone high. "Look, it's already on Channel 7, he yelled. He pressed play and the entire group saw it, a split-screen broadcast showing Jamal's Dashcam feed on one side and a live helicopter shot of the scene on the other. Kincaid's name was already plastered on the screen in bold letters. "Breaking, Atlanta. Officer caught in viral Dashcam incident." His voice faltered. This isn't..." Price didn't let him finish. "Greg Kincaid, you're being escorted to the precinct for questioning. Internal Affairs will take it from here." As the IA officer stepped forward to formally escort him, the crowd erupted. "Finally!" someone yelled. "About time they hold one of their own accountable." A small boy tugged at his mother's sleeve in the front row, whispering, "Mama, is that man going to jail?" She crouched to his level, her face heavy with years of exhaustion. "I don't know, baby, but he should." Jamal leaned against his car, his hand brushing the cracked paint like he was touching a wounded friend. For a fleeting moment, he imagined his daughter's face, how she always asked if he'd be safe when he drove home at night. Price exhaled, scanning the flashing lights, the restless crowd, the live cameras. He knew this was no longer just a street incident. It was about to become a case that the whole country would dissect. Another phone chimed in the crowd. Someone gasped. "Look! CNN just picked it up. National feed." Kincaid's breathing grew shallow. He looked around wildly, realizing there was nowhere left to hide. The dashcam kept streaming. 120,000 viewers. And far away in the mayor's office, a phone started ringing. Because the fallout was only just beginning. The internal affairs officers stepped in with slow precision, their presence heavy with finality. One extended his hand toward Kincaid. "Officer Greg Kincaid, you are relieved of duty effective immediately. You'll accompany us for questioning at the precinct." The crowd went quiet for a moment, the silence louder than the earlier murmurs. Kincaid's face contorted. Anger, fear, disbelief, all fighting for control. "You're making a mistake," he said through clenched teeth. "You're going to regret this when the truth comes out." Price's gaze didn't waver. "The truth is already out, Greg. It's been out since the moment you lifted your baton." Phones zoomed in on every movement. As Kincaid hesitated, the IA officer didn't flinch. "Weapon and badge have already been surrendered. You're not in control here anymore. Move." For the first time that night, the man who once strutted with authority looked small. He turned slowly, his boots dragging slightly against the pavement. As he passed Jamal, their eyes met, one filled with shame he refused to admit, the other filled with a quiet strength. Jamal didn't speak. He didn't need to. The IA officers guided Kincaid toward the black SUV. Cameras followed every step, capturing the moment for what it was, a symbolic undoing of power. From the crowd, a woman shouted, "Remember his face! This can't be swept under the rug!" Torres stepped forward to help Price maintain order. "Please keep the sidewalk clear. The investigation will proceed, but we need space." Yet even she knew the words were futile. The neighbors weren't just bystanders anymore, they were witnesses to a history that would not stay quiet. Across the street, an elderly man folded his arms, shaking his head. "I've lived here 50 years, he muttered. "I've seen this too many times, but never like this. Never with the whole world watching." Back at the precinct, dozens of calls were already pouring in, reporters, activists, even city council members demanding statements. The mayor's office issued a single line on Twitter: "We are aware of the viral incident involving Officer Greg Kincaid. A full investigation is underway. No one is above the law." Jamal leaned against his battered Chevy, the weight of the night finally sinking in. The adrenaline was fading, leaving behind a hollow exhaustion. He thought of his daughter, probably curled up with a bedtime story, unaware of the storm her father was caught in. Torres approached quietly. "Mr. Harris, do you have someone who can come pick you up? I don't think it's safe for you to drive this car home tonight." Jamal nodded slowly. "My cousin. He's the one who shared the feed." Torres gave a small, almost apologetic nod. "I'm sorry this happened to you. It shouldn't have." Jamal's eyes met hers. "You're right, it shouldn't have, but it did." Meanwhile, the media crews crowded closer to Price, demanding answers. "Captain Price, will Officer Kincaid be charged tonight? Was this officer previously reported for misconduct? Do you think this incident reflects deeper problems within the department?" Price stood tall but didn't give them what they wanted. "The investigation will determine all the facts. What I can say is this: no act like what you saw tonight will go unanswered." The IA vehicle door shut with a heavy thunk, sealing Kincaid inside. He stared blankly out the tinted window, his reflection merging with the flashing blue and red lights. Inside the van, the younger IA officer glanced at his tablet, the live stream still running. The viewer count climbed past 200,000. Comments scrolled faster than he could read. "This is bigger than one cop. They better not cover this up. When will it end?" As the SUV pulled away, the crowd erupted, not in cheers but in a low, simmering chant. "Justice for Jamal! Justice for Jamal!" Jamal closed his eyes for a moment, letting the sound wash over him. He hadn't asked for this. He just wanted to go home. But now, somehow, he had become the center of something larger. A fight for dignity, for accountability. Far away, in a sleek office building downtown, a lawyer watched the footage on her laptop. She leaned back in her chair, eyes narrowing. "This won't end with a suspension," she murmured. "We're taking this all the way." She reached for her phone and started dialing. The legal battle was about to begin. By the time the IA vehicle disappeared into the night, the street was a mosaic of flashing lights, camera tripods, and restless voices. Jamal stood silently beside his Chevy, the shattered glass glinting under the news van headlights. He was exhausted, but there was no time to process. He had already become a headline. Torres handed Jamal a small card. "This is my direct line," she said softly. "You'll need to give a formal statement tomorrow. Someone from Internal Affairs will contact you tonight." Jamal took the card, his fingers trembling slightly. I can't believe this is real," he murmured. "It shouldn't be," Torres replied quietly. She hesitated for a moment before adding, "Go home, Mr. Harris. Be with your family. Let the process work." But Jamal knew it wasn't that simple. As he called his cousin Malik to pick him up, the crowd began to disperse. Some neighbors lingered, offering quiet nods of support. A woman approached with a small blanket. "For your daughter," she whispered, placing it on the hood of the car. Jamal's throat tightened. Meanwhile, downtown in a high-rise office, civil rights attorney Vanessa Brooks stared at her laptop. The viral feed played on a loop, every frame burned into her mind. The baton slamming the mirror, the glass shattering, Jamal's calm voice asking for nothing but basic respect. She picked up her phone. "I want the full name of the driver. Jamal Harris, right? And find out if he has representation. By tomorrow morning, we're filing notice of intent." Her assistant on the other end hesitated. "Vanessa, this could be huge. It's already national news." "Exactly," she said, her voice cold and sharp. "And we're not letting it fade in a 24-hour cycle. We're going to hold every level of this department accountable." Back at the precinct, Captain Price sat in his office, staring at a rapidly blinking phone. Messages from the mayor, the district attorney, and even the state governor flooded in. Every line said the same thing in different words. "Get ahead of this before it burns the entire department." Price rubbed his temples. He knew the history. Greg Kincaid wasn't the first complaint to hit his desk, but he'd always been handled quietly. Now there would be no quiet. In the IA interrogation room, Kincaid sat across from two investigators. His posture was rigid, his voice clipped. "This is a witch hunt. I did my job." He was nervous. He looked like he was hiding something. "Really?" one investigator asked, tapping the tablet. "Because this video shows a man complying, and you destroying his property. Explain that." Kincaid's eyes darted to the corner. "You don't know what it's like out there. You don't know the kind of people we deal with. He could have been dangerous." "Dangerous?" The investigator's brow furrowed. "He's a nurse. He was coming home from a hospital shift. He was unarmed." Kincaid's jaw tightened. He had no answer. Meanwhile, Malik's phone was vibrating non-stop. News outlets wanted interviews. Activist groups were messaging. "Yo, Jamal," Malik said over the speakerphone, his voice trembling between anger and disbelief. "Man, you're everywhere. CNN, MSNBC, even the Times is picking this up." Jamal sat in Malik's car quietly, staring out the window at the blur of city lights. "I didn't ask for this," he whispered. "I know," Malik said, "but now you're the face of it." As they pulled into Jamal's driveway, his porch light was on. His wife Keisha stood in the doorway holding their daughter Layla, who clutched a stuffed bear. The moment Jamal stepped out, Layla ran to him, her tiny arms wrapping around his legs. "Daddy, why is everyone talking about you on TV?" Jamal bent down, scooping her up. He kissed her forehead, holding her close. "Because sometimes, baby girl, the truth needs to be seen." Keisha's eyes brimmed with worry as she touched his arm. "We'll get through this," she whispered. Inside the house, the TV played quietly in the background. The anchor's voice was steady but loaded. "The Atlanta Police Department is facing a growing scandal tonight after a viral dashcam video showed Officer Greg Kincaid violently damaging a black driver's car during a routine stop. Civil rights leaders are already demanding immediate charges." Jamal sat on the couch, his daughter nestled beside him. He stared at the screen, feeling the weight of every word. And far away, in a state capitol building, a senior official drafted a single line for tomorrow morning's press briefing. "This case will not disappear quietly." The fight was moving beyond the street. It was heading straight for the courtroom. Morning sunlight spilled across the city like a spotlight revealing hidden cracks. News vans clogged the street outside Jamal's modest home. Neighbors peeked from windows as reporters crowded the sidewalk, microphones ready to capture every word. Inside, Jamal sat at his kitchen table, his untouched coffee growing cold. Keisha scrolled through her phone nervously. "It's everywhere," she said softly. "They're calling it the Peachtree Stop incident." Jamal rubbed his temples, the fatigue of the night still clinging to his bones. "I just wanted to come home," he whispered. Malik paced nearby, phone pressed to his ear. "Yeah, we'll be there." "No, he hasn't given any interviews yet. We're waiting for the lawyer." He hung up and turned to Jamal. "Vanessa Brooks is on her way. She's serious, man. Says this is going bigger than just one case." Outside, a chant began to rise. A small crowd had gathered. Activists holding signs, neighbors who had seen it all. "No justice, no peace." Keisha's hand trembled slightly as she pulled back the curtain. This is more than us now." Moments later, a sleek black sedan pulled up. Vanessa Brooks stepped out, her dark suit crisp, her expression sharp. She walked past the cameras without flinching, ignoring the barrage of questions. "Mr. Harris," she said as she entered the kitchen, offering a firm handshake. "I'm sorry for what you went through, but we're not letting this slide." Jamal studied her face. She was calm but carried a fire in her eyes. "I didn't ask for any of this," he said quietly. Vanessa nodded. "I know, but sometimes the fight chooses you." She set a folder on the table. "We're filing a civil suit, not just against Kincaid, against the department. We'll demand his entire record. Every complaint, every cover-up." Keisha spoke up, her voice tight. "Will that change anything?" "It will if we force them into the light," Vanessa replied. Meanwhile, at the precinct, the walls were closing in. Internal affairs officers laid out thick files on the conference table. Old complaints about Kincaid that had been dismissed, suspiciously missing reports, lost dashcam footage from past stops. Captain Price scanned the pages, his face grim. So this wasn't his first time. The IA lead officer shook his head. "No, sir, it's a pattern, and the paper trail leads higher than just him." Price's jaw tightened. "Get me the chief, now!" In another part of the city, Kincaid sat in a cramped lawyer's office. His attorney, a grizzled man named Dalton Briggs, leaned back in his chair. "You've got two choices," Briggs said flatly. "You can resign quietly and hope the union backs you up, or we brace for the storm. But I'll warn you, it's already too big to contain." Kincaid slammed his fist on the table. "I'm not going down for doing my job. He was... His voice trailed off, searching for a word he couldn't justify. Briggs raised an eyebrow. "He was what? Unarmed? Calm? Compliant?" "The cameras don't lie, Greg. The whole country saw you." Kincaid's face flushed. "They don't know what it's like out there. They don't know what we deal with." Briggs leaned forward. "What you dealt with last night wasn't a threat. It was a man driving home. And now it's a national scandal. You're not just fighting Jamal Harris. You're fighting the entire narrative." Back at Jamal's house, Vanessa outlined the next steps. "We'll hold a press conference this afternoon. I'll speak on your behalf. You won't have to say much, just the truth. Simple, clear." Jamal exhaled slowly. "And after that?" "After that," Vanessa said, "we prepare for the hearing. This will go to court, and we'll make sure the whole country is watching." Outside, the crowd grew louder. More cameras arrived. A helicopter hovered above, its blades thumping like a restless heartbeat. Inside the mayor's office, a team of aides gathered around a large screen displaying the live feeds. The mayor stared at the footage silently. "We can't afford riots," she said. "Find out everything about Kincaid's history. If this department knew and did nothing..." She didn't finish the sentence. Back in the neighborhood, Jamal looked at his daughter, who was coloring quietly at the kitchen counter. Layla glanced up and smiled innocently. "Daddy, are all those people outside for you?" Jamal forced a soft smile. "They're here for what's right, baby girl." The front door knocked sharply. Malik peeked out and muttered, "It's starting." Vanessa Brooks straightened her jacket. "Time to face the cameras." The next chapter wasn't just about a broken car anymore. It was about exposing a system that had been breaking for years. And the city was bracing for impact. The air outside Jamal's home felt heavier than usual, buzzing with the electricity of restless anticipation. Reporters had formed a semicircle around a makeshift podium Vanessa Brooks's team had set up on the front lawn. Cameramen adjusted lenses, microphones lined the stand like sharp little daggers, waiting to capture every word. "Ready?" Vanessa asked Jamal quietly. Jamal nodded, though his hands were clenched. His eyes scanned the crowd, neighbors, activists, strangers holding signs that read, "Accountability now" and "Justice for Jamal." Vanessa stepped forward, her heels firm on the concrete. As soon as she reached the podium, the crowd's murmurs hushed into silence. She placed both hands on the edges and began, her voice calm but edged with undeniable strength. "Good afternoon. My name is Vanessa Brooks, and I represent Mr. Jamal Harris. Last night, an unarmed black man was subjected to unnecessary violence and humiliation by Officer Greg Kincaid during what was supposed to be a routine stop. This was not a misunderstanding. It was abuse of power, captured live for the entire nation to see." A ripple of camera clicks filled the pause. "This isn't just about one broken mirror or one shattered taillight," she continued, her voice rising slightly. "This is about a pattern of intimidation and unchecked authority. Today, we are filing an official civil rights lawsuit against Officer Kincaid and the Atlanta Police Department for racial profiling, destruction of property, and emotional distress." Reporters immediately shouted over each other, "Will you push for criminal charges? Has the department reached out to you? Do you believe this is part of a larger systemic problem?" Vanessa raised a hand to quiet them. "Yes, we are also calling on the district attorney's office to pursue criminal charges against Officer Kincaid for misconduct and malicious destruction of property. And we are demanding a full investigation into all previous complaints filed against him." Behind her, Jamal stood silently, his posture strong but his expression weary. He didn't want this spotlight, but he knew staying silent was no longer an option. Vanessa stepped aside slightly and turned to him. "Jamal, do you want to say anything?" He hesitated for a second, then stepped up. The microphone seemed to grow larger as he faced them. "I just wanted to get home to my family," he said quietly. "That's all I was trying to do. I didn't ask for any of this. But if what happened to me can stop it from happening to someone else, then I'll stand here today and speak the truth." A soft murmur of agreement came from the crowd. Meanwhile, downtown at City Hall, the mayor watched the press conference on a muted screen. Her advisors hovered nervously. "This isn't going away," one aide said. "We'll need a full review of the department," another added. The mayor's eyes stayed on Jamal's face. "Schedule a public statement. I'll address this head on. No excuses." Back at the precinct, Captain Price stood in the chief's office, dropping a stack of printed complaints onto the desk with a thud. "These are all the reports on Kincaid, most marked inconclusive. You tell me how many more we have hidden." The chief rubbed his forehead. "We can't bury this, not with cameras everywhere. We'll have to cooperate, fully." And across the city, in a cramped bar filled with off-duty officers, the tension was thick. Some muttered angrily about betrayal. Others sat quietly, staring at the screens showing the live press conference. One officer finally spoke. "You think the union's gonna back him?" Another shook his head slowly. "Not this time. He's toxic now." As the press conference wrapped, Vanessa's voice cut through the hum. "We are not seeking revenge. We are seeking justice, and we will not stop until it's served." The camera zoomed in on Jamal's face as he held his daughter's hand. It wasn't anger that showed, it was resilience. By evening, the footage dominated every major network. Headlines scrolled, "Civil rights lawsuit filed after viral Dashcam incident." National outrage builds over Atlanta police scandal. Social media boiled with debates. Some defended Jamal, others tried to spin the narrative. But one thing was clear, the story had ignited something larger. In a small office across the state, a district attorney closed her laptop after watching the press conference. She looked at her team and said firmly, "Draft the charges. We're opening a criminal case." The lines were drawn, and the fight was shifting from the streets to the courtroom. The following morning, the city hummed with uneasy energy. News anchors repeated the same footage on a loop. The baton slamming the mirror, Jamal's calm voice, and finally Officer Kincaid being escorted into an internal affairs vehicle. Headlines flashed across every screen in coffee shops, offices, and airport lounges. Inside the Atlanta Police Department, the mood was fractured. Officers gathered in hushed clusters, whispering about the scandal. Some were furious at Kincaid for tarnishing the badge. Others grumbled that the department was caving to public pressure. Captain Price walked through the hallway, his face unreadable. He knew what was waiting in the chief's office. When he stepped inside, the tension hit like a wall. The chief sat at his desk, two legal advisors beside him, and a speakerphone blinking on the table. On the line was the mayor. "Captain Price?" The mayor's voice was sharp, clipped. "This is already a national crisis. I want to know exactly how many prior complaints Kincaid has, and why none of them saw disciplinary action." Price set the thick folder on the desk. 8 complaints in 12 years. All marked inconclusive or resolved informally, most involving black drivers. There was silence on the line. Then the mayor spoke again. "We're done covering this. I'm ordering a full independent review. If anyone else was complicit in burying his record, I want names." "Yes, Mayor," the chief replied quietly. Meanwhile, in the IA interrogation room, Kincaid sat with his lawyer Dalton Briggs. The room was sterile, quiet except for the faint hum of the ceiling fan. Across from him, an investigator laid out still images from the dashcam video. "This is you," the investigator said, tapping the photo of Kincaid mid-swing, baton raised. "This is the driver's taillight. Explain why you broke it." Kincaid shifted uncomfortably. "It was tactical. He was acting suspicious. I needed to make sure." "Suspicious?" The investigator raised an eyebrow. "He was parked, unarmed, compliant. What threat did he pose?" Briggs cut in quickly. "We're not answering any more questions until formal charges are presented." The investigator leaned back, unimpressed. "Then you should prepare. They're coming." Across the city, Jamal sat in Vanessa Brooks' office, surrounded by stacks of documents. She slid a folder toward him. "These are Kincaid's past complaints. Look familiar? Same behavior, different victims, all ignored until now." Jamal flipped through the pages, his jaw tightening. "So they knew." "They knew," Vanessa confirmed. "And now we're going to show the world how deep this goes." Keisha sat quietly beside Jamal, holding his hand. "What happens next?" she asked. "We prepare for the hearing," Vanessa said. "The DA is already drafting criminal charges. This will likely go before a grand jury." Back on the streets, protests were forming. A sea of signs and chants echoed outside the precinct. "End qualified immunity," "Justice for Jamal," "No more cover-ups." News drones hovered above the crowd, broadcasting live. Interviews played on giant screens in Times Square. Celebrities began tweeting their support. Donations for Jamal's legal fund poured in from across the country, but not everyone was supportive. Late-night talk shows replayed clips of commentators spinning the story. One conservative pundit sneered, "This is just another example of the media demonizing a hardworking officer. Context matters." Yet the dashcam feed provided all the context anyone needed. That evening, the district attorney, Monique Harris, held her own press conference. Standing on the courthouse steps, she addressed the cameras directly. After reviewing the evidence from multiple sources, including live dashcam footage and witness testimony, we will be filing criminal charges against Officer Greg Kincaid. These charges include destruction of property, violation of civil rights under color of law, and official misconduct. No one is above accountability. The crowd outside the courthouse erupted into cheers. Reporters fired questions, but Monique didn't stay to answer. She turned and walked back inside, her statement echoing across every major news network within minutes. Inside his holding cell, Kincaid watched the DA's statement on a small wall-mounted TV. His knuckles tightened until they turned white. "They're making me the villain," he muttered. Dalton Briggs, standing outside the cell bars, sighed. "Greg, you are the villain. And now the system you thought would protect you? It's saving itself." At the same time, in a sleek boardroom in Washington, D.C., a group of federal officials watched the unfolding case. One of them, a stern woman in a Navy suit, closed her laptop and said quietly, "This isn't just local anymore. If we step in, we're setting a precedent." The man beside her nodded. "It might be time. The country's watching." Back in Jamal's neighborhood, the chants of protest merged with the flickering glow of candles. A small vigil was held. Not for a life lost, but for the countless lives that could have been, and for the hope that this time, the story wouldn't end in silence. Jamal stood at his window, Layla asleep in his arms. He whispered softly, almost to himself, "Maybe this time will be different." But even he wasn't sure, because accountability was promised before, and too often, it never came. A week later, the marble steps of Fulton County Courthouse were crowded with cameras and protest signs. The air was thick with anticipation. Today, the grand jury would hear the evidence against Officer Greg Kincaid. Inside, the atmosphere was tense. Reporters lined the hallways, microphones raised like bayonets. Vanessa Brooks walked briskly beside Jamal, her sharp suit immaculate, her expression calm but determined. Keisha followed close behind, clutching Jamal's hand for silent strength. "Remember," Vanessa whispered as they approached the courtroom, "you don't have to speak unless you're asked. Let the evidence talk for you." Jamal nodded, his face solemn. He still couldn't believe his life had been thrust into the center of a storm that reached far beyond him. Meanwhile, in a holding room down the corridor, Kincaid sat stiffly in a suit that seemed to fit him like an ill-kept secret. Dalton Briggs hovered over him, flipping through a stack of papers. "Listen carefully," Briggs muttered. "You're not testifying today. Just sit there, look composed, and let me handle it." Kincaid's jaw clenched. "They've already made up their minds. I'm guilty before I even walk in there." Briggs didn't look up. "Maybe, but remember, the grand jury decides if there's enough to indict. It's not the trial yet. Just keep your temper." When the doors opened, the hum of voices dimmed. The grand jury, 12 men and women, filed into their seats. District Attorney Monique Harris stepped forward, placing a cell stack of USB drives on the evidence table. "This," she began, "is the unedited dashcam footage streamed live on the night of the incident. It will speak louder than any argument I could make." The lights dimmed slightly as the footage played on a large monitor. The room was silent except for the crack of the baton hitting Jamal's mirror, the sharp shatter of the taillight, and Kincaid's cold, dismissive voice. "You think you can just cruise through my streets in this piece of junk?" Even the jurors shifted uncomfortably. Next, Monique presented witness testimony. Neighbors appeared on video, their voices steady. "I saw the officer smash the car. Jamal didn't do anything," one said. Another added, "We all yelled for him to stop, but he didn't care. He thought no one was watching." But everyone had been watching. Finally, Vanessa stood to present Jamal's medical records. After the incident, Mr. Harris was evaluated for emotional trauma. He's a nurse, a father, a man who works double shifts to care for his family. He is not a threat. He never was. And yet he was treated as if his very existence was a crime. Across the room, Kincaid shifted in his seat, his face pale. When the footage ended, silence hung heavy. One juror, a middle-aged woman with tired eyes, looked directly at Kincaid. Her gaze was sharp, unforgiving. Monique Harris turned to the jury. This is not just about one man losing his temper. This is about a pattern of abuse under the color of law. Today, you decide if that abuse faces consequences. After hours of deliberation, the jury foreman returned with a sealed envelope. The room held its breath. The clerk unfolded the paper and read aloud. The grand jury has found sufficient evidence to indict Officer Greg Kincaid on all charges: malicious destruction of property, civil rights violations, and official misconduct. A murmur swept through the courtroom. Jamal exhaled slowly, his shoulders lowering as if a weight had been lifted, though only slightly. Kincaid's face twisted with disbelief. "This is a joke," he muttered. Briggs placed a restraining hand on his arm. "Not now," he hissed. Outside that, the crowd erupted when the news hit. Chants of "indicted, indicted" echoed down the courthouse steps. But amid the cheers, Vanessa leaned toward Jamal. "This is just the beginning. Indictment means we go to trial. And trials? They're a different battlefield." Across the country, news outlets broke the story. Atlanta. Officer indicted after viral Dashcam incident. Grand jury moves. Case to trial. National attention grows. In the governor's office, a stern-faced aide handed over a briefing. "Sir, this case is sparking protests in 3 cities already. Federal observers are considering involvement." And late that night, in a dimly lit room, Kincaid sat alone, staring at his reflection in the window. His phone buzzed with a single message from an unknown number. "You're not the only one they'll come for. Be careful." He frowned, typing back, "Who is this?" No reply. Somewhere deeper than the headlines, a larger story was unraveling, one that hinted at more names, more secrets buried in files marked inconclusive. Jamal didn't know it yet, but this trial wouldn't just be about him. It would be about all the others who never had a camera running. And the real fight was still ahead. The courthouse steps had barely cleared after the grand jury's announcement when national media trucks began rolling into Atlanta. News anchors delivered live updates against backdrops of protesters holding signs and chanting for justice. Inside Vanessa Brooks' office, Jamal sat across from a table piled high with legal documents. Keisha rested a hand on his shoulder as Vanessa outlined the next phase. "The indictment is a victory," she said, her tone steady but cautious. "But it's not the end. Now we prepare for trial. Kincaid's defense will try to twist the narrative, claim you were uncooperative, that he feared for his safety." Jamal frowned. "But the video shows everything. How can they argue against that?" Vanessa sighed softly. "You'd be surprised what spin can do in a courtroom. That's why we'll bring more than just the video. We'll bring his entire history. Every complaint, every witness. We're not just proving what he did to you, we're proving what he's been doing for years." Meanwhile, in a downtown conference room, Kincaid met with Dalton Briggs and 2 representatives from the police union. The room was dimly lit, blinds drawn. Briggs leaned forward, his fingers steepled. "The trial is set for 3 months from now. We need a strategy." One union rep spoke up. "We can argue procedural error. Say he acted within department guidelines. We'll push the split-second decision narrative." Kincaid slammed his palm on the table. "I'm not taking the fall alone. You know damn well I wasn't the only one who handled things this way. They all knew." The room went silent. Briggs narrowed his eyes. "Be careful what you say, Greg. If you start naming names, this could snowball beyond your control." Kincaid leaned back, his voice low and bitter. "It already has." Back in Jamal's neighborhood, the protests evolved into organized rallies. Community leaders spoke on makeshift stages, demanding reforms, calling for oversight of police misconduct. "Jamal Harris is one of the lucky ones," one activist said into a megaphone, "because he had a camera. But how many didn't? How many voices were silenced because no one was watching?" Crowds nodded, clapped, chanted. The movement was no longer just about one man or one cop. It was about a system people were tired of fearing. That evening, Jamal tucked Layla into bed. She blinked up at him with innocent curiosity. "Daddy, are they going to make that bad man say sorry?" Jamal hesitated, brushing a strand of hair from her face. "We're going to try to make sure he can't hurt anyone else, baby girl. That's the best kind of sorry there is." In the city's mayoral office, the mayor prepared for a press conference with federal observers standing quietly in the back. "We're cooperating fully," she said, her tone carefully measured. The Department of Justice has expressed interest in reviewing the case for broader civil rights implications. That line made headlines within the hour. Federal government may intervene in Atlanta police case. Across the country, more cities saw protests erupt, with Jamal's name now echoing alongside others who had suffered similar fates. Meanwhile, Vanessa received an email from an anonymous source. Attached were scanned documents, internal memos, emails from higher-ups in the department. They hinted at something deeper: repeated cover-ups, quietly settled complaints, and a chain of command that looked the other way. Vanessa's eyes widened as she scrolled through. She called her paralegal immediately. "Get these verified. If these are real, we're looking at systemic corruption, not just one rogue cop." At the same time, Kincaid sat alone in his apartment, nursing a glass of whiskey. His phone buzzed again. Another unknown number. He hesitated, then answered. A distorted voice spoke. "You think you're the only one on the hook? Don't drag others down with you. Keep your mouth shut." Kincaid's blood ran cold. "Who is this?" The line went dead. He looked at his reflection in the dark window. The once confident officer now looked like a man cornered by his own choices, and by forces even he didn't fully understand. Back in Jamal's living room, Malik watched a news segment showing a panel of legal analysts debating the upcoming trial. "This isn't just a local case anymore," one analyst said. "This trial could set a precedent for how dashcam and livestream evidence changes accountability in policing." Jamal sat quietly on the couch, listening. He didn't want to be a precedent. He wanted to be a father, a husband, a man who could drive home without fear. But that choice had been taken from him. Vanessa called later that night. "Jamal, I need you ready. There's more to this than we thought. It's not just about you. It's about a pattern. We're going to expose it all." Jamal exhaled, staring at Layla's drawings taped to the fridge. "Then let's do it," he said. "Let's make sure it means something." Far away, the Department of Justice drafted an internal memo. Potential federal civil rights investigation. Subject: Atlanta PD. The storm was growing, and soon it would reach everyone who thought they were safe in the shadows, because the trial would reveal more than anyone expected. The days leading up to the trial felt like the calm before a hurricane. Outside the courthouse, barricades were already in place to control the crowds expected on opening day. National networks set up temporary studios nearby, ready to broadcast every detail. Inside Vanessa Brooks' office, the mood was focused but tense. Jamal sat with his hands clasped, listening as Vanessa and her team laid out the strategy. "We'll start with the dashcam footage," Vanessa explained. "It's irrefutable, but the real blow will come when we bring in Kincaid's past complaints. The jury needs to see, oh, this wasn't an isolated incident." Her paralegal Jordan slid a thick stack of papers across the table. "We've confirmed the anonymous documents. They're real. Multiple emails show higher-ups ignored complaints or dismissed them as insufficient evidence." Jamal stared at the stack. "So they all knew, and they did nothing." Vanessa nodded grimly. "And now we'll make sure everyone knows." Meanwhile, in a secure conference room at the police union headquarters, Kincaid sat surrounded by his defense team. Dalton Briggs spoke with a cold pragmatism. "Here's the plan. We argue department policy. You acted within your training, claim you suspected the driver was hiding contraband, that his body language triggered concern. The union will provide an expert to testify about high-pressure scenarios." Kincaid scowled. "And what about the video? Everyone saw it." Briggs leaned back. "We'll say the video doesn't show the full context. We'll hint that the live stream was edited before it went viral. It's not a great defense, but it plants doubt." One union rep shifted uncomfortably. "Greg, even if we win the trial, you're done. No department will take you back. You're a liability now." Kincaid's jaw tightened. "I'm not going down alone. If they think they can throw me under the bus and walk away clean, they're wrong. I'll talk." The room went silent. Briggs gave him a sharp look. "Be very careful, Greg. There are people in the city who don't want you talking." Kincaid opened his mouth to argue, but the union rep cut him off. "Just keep your head down. Don't make this worse than it already is." Across town, protests had swelled into organized marches. Activists filled Centennial Park, holding signs with names of victims from past incidents. Speakers took turns at the microphone, their voices echoing off the city skyline. "This isn't just about Jamal Harris," one organizer said passionately. "This is about every Jamal, every Layla who grows up afraid their father might not come home." Cheers erupted and chants followed. "Accountability, now! At the same time, in a federal office in Washington, a team of DOJ attorneys reviewed the case. One of them, a sharp-eyed prosecutor named Evelyn Ross, closed the file with a snap. "This is bigger than one officer," she said. "If we open a civil rights investigation, we're looking at the entire department." Her colleague hesitated. "It could trigger backlash." Evelyn's voice was steady. "Or it could finally trigger change." Back at Jamal's house, the weight of it all settled in the quiet moments. Layla sat on the floor, building towers with her blocks. Keisha folded laundry in silence. Jamal watched them, feeling the mix of love and sorrow that came with knowing his private life had become a public battle. Malik entered with his phone in hand. "Bro, you're not gonna believe this. A whistleblower just came forward. He's a retired cop who says he filed reports on Kincaid years ago and was told to keep quiet." Jamal blinked. "Someone's willing to testify?" "Yeah," Malik said, scrolling. "Vanessa's already reaching out. If this guy talks, it could blow the whole case wide open." Meanwhile, at a late-night diner on the edge of the city, a retired officer named Henry Cole stirred his coffee nervously. He stared at his old badge lying on the counter. After years of silence, the weight of what he knew had become too much. When Vanessa arrived, he looked up with weary eyes. "I tried to warn them about Kincaid, about others like him. They buried it every time. But I've got records, emails, logs. I kept copies." Vanessa's heart pounded. "Will you testify?" Henry hesitated, glancing around the diner like he feared being watched. Finally, he nodded. "Yeah, it's time." Elsewhere, Kincaid sat in his dim apartment, scrolling through news feeds on his laptop. His phone buzzed with another anonymous message. "Remember what you owe us. Stay quiet, or you won't make it to trial." His hand shook as he set the phone down. For the first time, he realized he wasn't just facing the court. He was facing the same system that had once protected him. Back in Vanessa's office, she reviewed Henry's documents late into the night. As she read through them, her eyes widened. This wasn't just negligence, it was deliberate, a chain of command that protected bad cops, signed off by names high above Kincaid. She whispered to herself, "This isn't just one case, it's a blueprint." She closed the folder and looked out the window at the city lights. The trial ahead wouldn't just expose Kincaid. It could expose everyone who had built the wall he hid behind. And some people would do anything to keep that wall standing. The trial would not just be about justice, it would be about survival. The city was restless as the trial date drew closer. Protesters gathered nightly outside the precinct, their chants echoing through the streets like a heartbeat demanding justice. Inside police headquarters, blinds stayed shut and conversations were hushed. Captain Price sat in his office, staring at a confidential memo on his desk. It was a list of names, officers with histories similar to Kincaid's. He rubbed his temples, knowing that once the trial started, this list would no longer be hidden. In another part of the city, Henry Cole, the retired officer who had come forward, sat in his small apartment surrounded by boxes of old files. He flipped through worn folders, highlighting key pieces of evidence. Each document was another nail in the coffin of a system that had ignored its own corruption. His phone buzzed. It was Vanessa. "Henry, are you still willing to testify?" she asked. Henry hesitated for a beat before answering. "Yeah, but you need to understand, this isn't just about Kincaid. When I talk, I'm pulling the thread on an entire network. You're going to see people you never expected in this mess." Vanessa's voice stayed calm. "Then we pull the thread. All of it." Meanwhile, Jamal tried to live quietly in the storm. He walked Layla to school, feeling the stares of strangers who now recognized him from the news. Some offered quiet words of support. Others whispered, unsure of what to believe. Malik caught up to him as they walked back to the car. "Bro, you're trending again. Someone leaked a clip of the whistleblower's documents. People are saying this could take down more than just one officer." Jamal sighed. "I didn't ask to bring down a department. I just wanted to go home that night." Malik nodded. "Yeah, but now you're the reason the truth's coming out. That's bigger than any of us." Across town, in a dimly lit office, Kincaid sat with Dalton Briggs. The lawyer's face was grim. "Greg, you need to know. There's talk that Cole is going to testify. He has records, emails." Kincaid's face drained of color. "He wouldn't dare." Briggs leaned forward. "He would. And if he does, this trial stops being about you. It becomes about everyone. And the people who let you do what you did, they won't go down quietly. As if on cue, Kincaid's phone buzzed. Another anonymous text. "You're in too deep. Keep your mouth shut, or you won't live to regret it." Kincaid stared at the screen, his hands trembling. For the first time, he realized he was just a pawn, one they'd sacrificed to protect the bigger players. Meanwhile, Vanessa met with the district attorney, Monique Harris. "We need to expand the case," Vanessa said. "Cole's testimony shows this was systemic. It's not just one officer, it's a pattern buried for years." Monique nodded slowly. "We're already coordinating with the DOJ. If Cole's evidence checks out, it could trigger a full federal investigation. But you need to keep him safe until trial. If he disappears, so does your leverage." That same evening, Cole heard a car engine outside his apartment. He peered through the blinds. A black SUV idled on the street with its headlights off. His gut tightened. He picked up the phone and called Vanessa. "I think they know I'm talking," he whispered. "I'll send someone to stay with you tonight," she said firmly. "Don't open the door for anyone." Hours later, in a high-rise downtown, a group of men in suits met in a private room. They weren't lawyers or cops. They were the kind of people who stayed in the shadows, the ones who made calls that never left a paper trail. "We can't let Cole take the stand," one said coldly. "If he talks, it unravels everything." Another man nodded. "Handle it quietly. No noise before the trial." Back at Jamal's home, the night was calm but heavy. Keisha tucked Layla into bed while Jamal stared at the TV. Another news segment analyzed the growing scandal. This case has uncovered what some are calling a culture of impunity within the Atlanta Police Department, the anchor said. "Federal involvement is expected." Keisha joined him on the couch, her voice soft. "Do you think it'll really change anything?" Jamal looked at her, then at their sleeping daughter in the next room. "I don't know, but we can't go back to the way it was." The camera on the news shifted to a live shot of the courthouse, already surrounded by barriers and satellite trucks. The trial was days away, but the city felt like it was holding its breath. And in a hidden office, a burner phone buzzed. A single text appeared on the screen. "Cole is a problem. Fix it before opening statements." The pieces were moving. And now, the fight wasn't just about justice, it was about who would survive long enough to tell the truth. Because some walls don't crumble without a fight from those who built them. The trial was now less than a week away, and the city felt like a coiled spring ready to snap. Helicopters circled above nightly protests. National media outlets ran countdowns, framing it as the case that could change policing forever. But in a quiet corner of the city, far from the noise, Henry Cole double-checked the locks on his door. His small apartment felt like a cage. He sat at his kitchen table, staring at the pile of documents he'd kept hidden for years. Emails, memos, internal reports. Each piece of paper was a fragment of truth the department had buried. His phone rang, breaking the tense silence. It was Vanessa. "I've arranged security for you," she said. "Someone will stay nearby until trial. Don't go anywhere alone." Henry let out a shaky breath. "I never thought it would come to this. I kept these files because I couldn't live with the guilt. But now I wonder if they'll let me live at all." Vanessa's voice was steady. "We'll protect you. And when you testify, it won't just be your voice. It'll be everyone's who was silenced." Meanwhile, in a sleek law office downtown, Dalton Briggs sat with Kincaid. The officer's usual bravado was gone. His hands fidgeted nervously. "You need to tell me everything," Briggs said, his tone clipped. "If Cole has what I think he has, the department might cut you loose completely. They'll let you burn so they can stay clean." Kincaid's eyes darted to the window. They promised you nothing," Briggs interrupted. "You were useful. Now you're expendable. If you know something, now's the time to leverage it." Kincaid hesitated, then spoke in a low voice. "There were meetings, quiet ones. Supervisors telling us which complaints would go away. I wasn't the only one. I was just the one dumb enough to get caught on camera." Briggs leaned back, calculating. "If you flip, you might save yourself, but you'll make enemies, powerful ones." Kincaid stared at the floor. For the first time, he realized there was no good way out. That night, Jamal tried to focus on his family. He sat at the dinner table, Keisha across from him, Layla humming softly as she played with her food. But his mind kept drifting to the trial, to the cameras, to the endless wave of attention he never wanted. Keisha reached across the table, squeezing his hand. "You're doing this for her," she said softly, nodding toward their daughter. For all the kids who shouldn't have to grow up afraid. Jamal nodded, but the weight didn't lift. I just hope it matters. After all this, I hope it actually changes something. Across the city, a black SUV rolled slowly past Henry Cole's building. Inside, two men in plain clothes watched his window. You think he'll actually testify? One asked. The driver smirked faintly. Not if we get to him first. They didn't stop. They didn't need to. Not yet. The message was in the silence, in the slow, deliberate pass of the car through the quiet street. Later that night, Henry heard footsteps in the hallway. He froze, holding his breath. A shadow passed under his door, lingering for a moment before moving on. His heart pounded in his chest. When Vanessa called to check in, his voice trembled. They're watching me. She tightened her grip on the phone. Stay inside. I'm sending someone over right now. Do not answer the door. Meanwhile, in a federal building, DOJ prosecutor Evelyn Ross briefed her team. If Cole testifies with documentation of systemic cover-ups, we open a federal civil rights investigation immediately, she said. This won't stop with Kincaid. It could take down an entire chain of command. Her assistant glanced at her nervously. And if Cole doesn't make it to trial? Evelyn's expression hardened. Then we find another way. But we keep him alive. Understood? At the same moment, Kincaid sat alone in his dark apartment, staring at another text message on his phone. You're not a hero. Don't make yourself a target. He gripped the phone tightly. For years, he thought the badge would shield him. Now he realized it was the very thing painting a target on his back. The city was moving like a chessboard, pieces sliding quietly into place. Lawyers, activists, shadowy players in the dark. And Jamal, the man who just wanted to drive home in peace, was at the center of it all. He stood at his window that night, watching the glow of protest candles flicker in the distance. He whispered to himself, whatever happens, it can't go back to the way it was. Across the city, Henry Cole finally sat down, pen in hand. He wrote a single note on the top of his files. If I don't make it, this is my testimony. And somewhere in the shadows, someone else was writing a plan to make sure he never would. The trial hadn't even started, and the stakes were already life or death. The courthouse loomed like a silent giant under the glow of streetlights. Barricades lined the sidewalks, ready for the storm of media, protesters, and curious onlookers expected at dawn. The trial was set to begin in less than 12 hours. Inside Vanessa Brooks' office, the atmosphere was charged with quiet determination. Stacks of evidence were neatly organized on the conference table: dashcam footage, witness statements, internal memos, and the documents Henry Cole had provided. Everything's in place, Vanessa said, glancing at her team. Tomorrow, we present the truth. No theatrics, no distractions, just the facts. Jamal sat in the corner, staring at his folded hands. He felt the weight of the moment pressing down on him. Malik leaned against the wall nearby, watching his cousin with concern. You good, man? Malik asked gently. Jamal exhaled slowly. I don't know. I feel like I'm walking into a fight I didn't ask for, but I can't back out now. Keisha sat beside him, her hand resting on his arm. You're not walking in alone. We're all with you. Meanwhile, in a hotel across town, Kincaid paced the floor of his room. Dalton Briggs sat at the desk, reviewing their defense strategy one last time. Tomorrow is about planting doubt, Briggs said calmly. The jury doesn't have to like you. They just have to question the story they've been fed. We'll focus on procedure, frame it as a misunderstanding. Kincaid stopped pacing. And Cole? What if he testifies? Briggs looked up, his expression tight. If Cole takes the stand, this case changes. It won't just be about you. It'll be about the department, and if that happens… He didn't finish the sentence. Kincaid rubbed his face with both hands. They're going to bury me. Maybe, Briggs said. But if you stay quiet, maybe they won't bury you alone. Across the city, Henry Cole sat in his dim apartment, his packed bag by the door. A young security officer, hired by Vanessa, sat silently in a chair near the window. Cole glanced at the guard. You think they'll really come for me? The guard didn't answer immediately. He just checked the lock on his weapon. I think they don't want you talking, but you're talking anyway. That's what makes you dangerous. Cole nodded, his eyes heavy with years of silence finally coming undone. I've been quiet long enough. As midnight approached, the city was alive with conflicting energies. Outside the courthouse, protesters lit candles, singing softly. The news vans parked in rows, anchors rehearsing their opening lines for the morning broadcast. In the mayor's office, she reviewed the city's security plan. "We can't let this turn into chaos," she said to her staff. "If tensions boil over, it won't just be about the trial, it'll be the whole city." Meanwhile, at the DOJ's regional office, Evelyn Ross prepared her own files. "If tomorrow exposes what we think it will, we'll have enough to initiate a federal investigation," she said to her team. "Be ready to move fast." Back at Jamal's house, the night felt long and still. Layla had fallen asleep on the couch, clutching her teddy bear. Jamal gently carried her to her room, tucking her under the blanket. He paused for a moment, just watching her breathe. Keisha joined him in the hallway. "Tomorrow's the first step," she whispered. Jamal nodded. "Yeah, first step." Outside, a soft rain began to fall, tapping gently against the window panes. It was a rare moment of calm in a storm that was about to erupt. But somewhere across town, calm was the last thing on anyone's mind. In a dark SUV parked near Cole's building, two men sat in silence. One checked his watch. "You sure this is the right time?" the driver asked. The other man nodded, slipping on gloves. "Before the trial, before he talks." They stepped out quietly, disappearing into the shadows of the street. At that same moment, Cole poured himself a cup of coffee to steady his nerves. He didn't notice the faint creak of the stairwell outside his door. In Jamal's neighborhood, the candles at the vigil flickered against the breeze. People prayed softly, holding signs close to their chests, and in the courthouse, rows of empty seats waited for the morning, when the city would wake up to a trial that would either reveal the truth or bury it deeper. Cole took one last sip of coffee and sat down at his table. He glanced at the bag with his files ready for morning. But in the hallway outside, footsteps stopped just beyond his door. And before the sun could rise, the silence would be broken. The hallway outside Henry Cole's apartment was eerily silent except for the faint hum of the building's old fluorescent lights. Inside, Cole sat at his kitchen table, flipping through his notes one last time. Each paper was a story waiting to be told. Names, dates, internal memos that painted a picture of years of buried misconduct. He took a deep breath, steadying his nerves. The young security officer Vanessa had sent was seated by the window, scanning the street below. "It's quiet," the guard said, but his voice carried a tension that betrayed his instincts. Cole managed a small, tired smile. "Too quiet." Then came the soft sound, barely audible, a faint metallic click from the stairwell. The guard stiffened instantly, his hand moving toward his holster. "Did you hear that?" Cole whispered. Before the guard could respond, the hallway light outside flickered once, then went dark. "Stay back," the guard ordered, moving toward the door. Cole froze, his mind racing. He wasn't a man easily rattled, but this felt different, calculated. The guard peeked through the peephole. Nothing. Just black. He stepped back carefully, keeping his weapon drawn. Then, 3 sharp knocks. "Who is it?" the guard demanded. No answer. Seconds stretched like hours. Cole's breathing grew shallow. "What do we do?" he whispered. The guard shook his head. "We wait. Do not open that door." But outside, the shadowy figures weren't in a hurry. They knew fear worked better when it was slow. One of them crouched by the doorframe, leaving behind a small folded note before retreating silently down the stairwell. Moments later, the hallway light flickered back to life. The guard cautiously opened the door just a crack. No one was there, only the note. He picked it up carefully and unfolded it. 4 words written in bold black ink. "Stay silent or vanish." Cole's face went pale. The guard locked the door immediately. "We need to call Vanessa, now." Meanwhile, across town, Vanessa Brooks was still in her office, finalizing her opening statement for the trial. Her phone buzzed. "Ms. Brooks," the guard said quickly. "Someone was outside Cole's apartment. They left a threat. You need to move him now." Vanessa's grip tightened on the phone. "Get him out of there. Take him to the safe location we discussed. I'll handle the rest." Across the city, Kincaid sat alone in his hotel room, staring at the muted news broadcast. The headline scrolled across the bottom of the screen. "Whistleblower expected to testify in Atlanta police trial." He rubbed his temples, the weight of the situation pressing in on him. He thought about the anonymous messages, the veiled threats. He was caught between 2 worlds, one demanding his silence, the other ready to devour him for speaking out. Maybe it would have been better if that dashcam had never been running, he muttered to himself. Meanwhile, Jamal tried to find peace at home, but sleep wouldn't come. He sat on the couch, scrolling through his phone. Messages of support flooded his inbox, but they all blurred together. He didn't want to be a symbol. He just wanted to live. Keisha joined him, resting her head on his shoulder. "Tomorrow it starts," she said softly. Jamal nodded. "Yeah. Tomorrow everything changes." At the courthouse, security teams did final sweeps, checking for vulnerabilities. Reporters set up their spots for the morning broadcast. A few protesters had already gathered, holding candles under the night sky. Back at Cole's apartment, the guard moved quickly. He stuffed the documents into a secure bag and ushered Cole toward the back exit. "This way," the guard whispered. "Vanessa's sending a car. We're not using the front entrance." Cole hesitated, looking back at the small apartment he had lived in for years. It felt like he was leaving behind the last piece of his old life. As they slipped into the alleyway, a black SUV down the block slowly rolled forward, its tinted windows glinting under the streetlight. "Keep moving," the guard urged. Cole's heart pounded. He wasn't a young man anymore, and the adrenaline made his hands tremble, but he kept walking, clutching the bag that held the truth. At that same moment, Vanessa was on the phone with the DOJ's Evelyn Ross. "Cole's being moved," Vanessa said. "He's rattled, but he'll testify." Evelyn's voice was calm but urgent. "Keep him safe. If he disappears, the entire case risks collapsing. We'll have federal marshals on standby by morning." Cole and the guard reached a waiting car. But just as they opened the door, a flash of headlights blinded them. Another vehicle pulled into the alley, blocking the exit. The guard stepped in front of Cole, his weapon raised. "Get in the car!" The opposing vehicle's door opened slowly, a figure stepping out but staying in the shadows. "Henry Cole," the figure said calmly, "you don't need to do this. Walk away, and you'll be left alone." Cole's breath caught in his throat. The guard barked, "Move now!" and shoved Cole into the car. Tires screeched as they sped off into the night. In the rearview mirror, the blocked alley grew smaller, but Cole knew this wasn't over. Not by a long shot. The trial would begin at sunrise, but the battle for the truth had already started in the dark. Dawn broke over Atlanta with a tense stillness. The courthouse stood like a fortress, its steps already swarming with reporters, photographers, and activists holding signs. Helicopters buzzed overhead, broadcasting live aerial shots of the growing crowd. Inside a small guarded conference room, Jamal adjusted his tie nervously. Vanessa Brooks was beside him, flipping through a neatly organized binder. Malik and Keisha sat nearby, offering quiet support. "Remember," Vanessa said, her voice calm but firm, "today isn't about reliving every detail. It's about telling the truth, clearly and simply. Let the evidence do the heavy lifting." Jamal nodded, swallowing hard. "I'm ready." Meanwhile, in another wing of the courthouse, Kincaid sat stiffly with his defense team. Dalton Briggs whispered strategy, but Kincaid's mind was elsewhere. He stared at the polished floor, haunted by the memory of the text messages warning him to keep silent. Briggs leaned closer. "Listen to me. Don't react to anything today. We'll challenge the admissibility of Cole's documents if he makes it to the stand." Kincaid didn't respond. He just clenched his jaw, knowing every camera in the room would be pointed at him. As the courtroom doors opened, a hush fell over the crowd. Spectators filled the benches while journalists lined the back wall. The judge, a stern woman named Harriet Monroe, took her seat at the bench, her gavel striking sharply. "This court is now in session," she announced. "State of Georgia versus Greg Kincaid." The opening statements began. District Attorney Monique Harris stood first. Her voice was steady but laced with conviction. "Ladies and gentlemen of the jury, you will see with your own eyes the truth of what happened to Mr. Jamal Harris on that roadside. You will hear the sounds of a baton breaking glass without cause. You will see a man who was calm, compliant, unarmed, treated like a criminal simply because of the color of his skin. And you will see that this was not an isolated mistake. This was a pattern of abuse hidden for years." The jury watched silently, their faces tense. Briggs rose for the defense, his tone measured and calculated. "What you will see is a partial picture," he said. "A video taken out of context, amplified by social media. Officer Kincaid was doing his duty in a high-pressure environment. This was not malice. It was a misunderstanding. We ask you not to be swayed by public outrage, but to focus on facts." When opening statements ended, the first piece of evidence was played, the dashcam video. The room fell silent as the footage filled the monitors. The sharp sound of the baton smashing the mirror, Jamal's calm voice saying, "I just want to go home," and Kincaid's cold reply. Some jurors shifted uncomfortably. One clasped her hands tightly in her lap. Vanessa watched their reactions closely. She knew the video spoke louder than any words. After the footage, Jamal was called to the stand. He walked slowly, feeling the weight of every eye in the room. "Mr. Harris," Monique Harris began gently, "can you describe what you remember from that night?" Jamal took a breath. "I was just driving home after a double shift at the hospital. My daughter was waiting for me. I wasn't speeding. I wasn't breaking any laws. And then, I saw the lights in my mirror." He explained the stop, how he stayed calm, how the officer never gave a reason before destroying his car. His voice wavered but never broke. On cross-examination, Briggs tried to rattle him. "Mr. Harris, were you nervous during the stop?" "Of course," Jamal said. "Every black driver gets nervous when they see those lights." Briggs pounced. "So your behavior could have appeared suspicious to a trained officer, couldn't it?" Jamal stared at him, his voice quiet but firm. "I kept my hands visible. I answered every question. I did everything we're told to do." "Suspicious?" "No." "Human?" "Yes." The jury's eyes stayed on Jamal. Briggs hesitated before stepping back. During a short recess, Vanessa checked her phone. A message from her security contact lit up the screen. "Cole is safe. We moved him to the secure location. He'll testify tomorrow." She exhaled quietly, relieved. But she knew that meant the real storm would hit on day 2. Meanwhile, outside the courthouse, the crowd swelled into the thousands. Chants echoed off the stone walls. "We see you! We hear you! Justice for Jamal!" Back in his hotel room, Kincaid watched the live coverage on a muted screen. His face looked pale in the reflection. He muttered to himself, "Tomorrow, it all comes out." In a nearby office, 2 men in suits reviewed a thin dossier marked Cole testimony. One of them closed it slowly. "We have less than 24 hours to make sure he doesn't talk," he said coldly. The other man nodded. "Then we act tonight." And as the first day of trial ended, the city held its breath. Day 1 had been about Jamal. Day 2 would be about the truth everyone else was desperate to bury. Because some testimonies don't just convict one man, they burn the whole house down. The second day of trial dawned under a heavy gray sky. Rain misted over the courthouse steps, but it didn't stop the crowd from gathering. The energy outside was electric. More reporters, more protesters, more eyes than ever before. This wasn't just a trial now, it felt like a reckoning. Inside the courthouse, the tension was palpable. Jamal sat quietly in the gallery with Keisha and Malik, hands clasped tightly. Vanessa Brooks stood at the prosecution table, her face calm but focused. Across the aisle, Dalton Briggs whispered something to Kincaid, who sat stiff and pale, his eyes darting nervously around the room. Judge Harriet Monroe entered, her gavel echoing sharply. "Court is now in session. The prosecution may call its next witness." Monique Harris stood. "The state calls Henry Cole." The room shifted. Spectators leaned forward. Reporters scribbled furiously. Kincaid visibly flinched, his fingers gripping the edge of the defense table. The side door opened, and Henry Cole walked in. He looked older than his years, his shoulders heavy with the weight of what he carried. A marshal guided him to the stand. As he raised his right hand and swore to tell the truth, the silence was deafening. "Mr. Cole," Monique began, "can you tell the jury your former occupation?" "I was a police officer," Cole said, his voice steady. "Atlanta PD, 23 years. And during your time with the department, did you know the defendant, Officer Greg Kincaid?" Cole nodded. "Yes, I trained with him, worked with him for years." The jury watched intently. Monique stepped closer. "Why are you here today, Mr. Cole?" Cole took a slow breath. "Because what happened to Jamal Harris wasn't a mistake. It wasn't just one bad night. It was part of a culture, one I couldn't stay silent about anymore." A ripple of murmurs moved through the courtroom. Cole continued, his voice stronger now. "I filed reports. I warned supervisors about Kincaid's behavior. There were complaints, 8, maybe more, but they disappeared. Every time. He was protected. We were told, don't rock the boat. And it wasn't just him. It was a whole network of people willing to look the other way." Briggs stood abruptly. "Objection! Speculation!" Judge Monroe raised a hand. "Overruled. The witness may continue." Cole reached into a folder and held up a series of printed emails. "I kept copies. Internal emails from commanders, telling us which complaints to resolve quietly. Documents showing Kincaid's disciplinary actions were erased from his file. These aren't opinions, they're records." Monique handed the documents to the clerk, who displayed them on a large screen for the jury. Black and white emails appeared with phrases like, "Handle off the books," "Don't escalate, too much attention already." Gasps rippled through the spectators. Monique turned back to Cole. "Why keep these for so long?" Cole's eyes softened. "Because I thought one day someone brave enough would force the truth into the light. Jamal Harris, he didn't ask to be that person, but he became it. And now it's time everyone saw what was really happening." Across the room, Kincaid shifted uncomfortably. Briggs whispered frantically to him, but it was too late. The jury was glued to the screen. Then Cole dropped the final blow. "There are names in those emails, supervisors, commanders, even union reps, people who let this go on. If this trial digs deep enough, you won't just see one man on the stand. You'll see a whole system." A single moment of silence followed before the courtroom erupted into whispers. Monique looked at the judge. "Your Honor, we move to submit these documents as evidence of a systemic cover-up." Briggs leapt to his feet. "Objection! This trial is about one officer, not an entire department." Judge Monroe's gavel came down hard. "Enough. The objection is noted, but the documents are admissible. Continue." Kincaid slumped in his seat. He knew it now. There was no saving him, and there was no saving the wall of silence that had protected him for years. Outside the courthouse, the crowd grew louder as the news spread like wildfire. Live broadcasts announced, "Whistleblower testifies, reveals years of cover-ups in Atlanta PD." Federal agents watching from Washington exchanged knowing glances. Evelyn Ross closed her file and said to her team, "It's time. We're opening the federal investigation." Back in the courtroom, Cole finished his testimony with one final sentence. "This isn't about one bad cop. It's about a broken system. And it's time it was held accountable." When he stepped down, Jamal met his eyes for a brief moment. Cole gave a faint nod, a silent promise that the truth wouldn't be buried again. As the session ended, Judge Monroe addressed the room. "This court will recess until tomorrow. Counsel, be prepared for the next phase." The jury filed out, their expressions heavy. The reporters scrambled, phones buzzing with breaking news alerts. Vanessa leaned toward Jamal. "This just changed everything. It's no longer just about you. It's about everyone who was failed by this system." Jamal looked around the room, feeling the weight of the moment. He wasn't just a man seeking justice anymore. He was the spark that had set an entire chain of truth in motion. Kincaid sat frozen, realizing the people who once protected him might now turn on him to save themselves. Outside, the chants grew louder, echoing through the streets. "Tear it down! Build it right!" And in the mayor's office, the phone rang again. This time it was the governor. Because after today, it wasn't just a trial, it was the beginning of a reckoning.